Just a few notes about reading colour charts. I've got my computer screen visible that you can see at the moment, and this has got the colour chart that you'll find in the pattern. What you'll notice is that on the right hand side of the screen is the numbers which are odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. These represent right-sided rows. On a right side row you'll be knitting the row, and you work your way across the row from right to left. For a wrong-sided row you'll be starting on the left hand side and working your way across to the right. You may wish to print out the chart and on the left hand side write the even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. to identify that this is a wrong side row. The contrast colour is in red and the main colour is in white. Welcome to the Colourwork component tutorial of our Take Heart Hottie. We've completed our increase rows and knitted 2 rounds, and we're now ready to start knitting the front of the hot water bottle cover, which includes the heart done in stranded colourwork. For my hot water bottle cover, I've got the Bohemia Outlaw Sport yarn, and my main colour is Bone, which is a beautiful dusky pink, and my contrast colour is in Keepsake, which I would describe as an eggplant colour. The first thing we're going to do when we knit across the front is we're going to increase 1 stitch at each end of the front, and that stitch will form the seam which we'll put together later after we've also knitted the back. So to start we're going to knit 1 stitch and then we're going to knit into the stitch below. So what we've done is increase by 1 stitch. We then knit 21 stitches, and now we're ready to add in our contrast colour. I find when I'm doing my colour work, either stranded or intarsia, I like to add in my colour with the tail of the yarn sitting on the right side of the work. I bring it between the needles and then I just turn this over. I bring it under the yarn that I've just finished using. Now we're going to knit 4 stitches in our contrast colour. And then we're going to go back to our main colour. To make sure your tension isn't too tight, I just spread the stitches a little along the needle so that they're about the same space as these stitches here. Then we're going to knit until there is one remaining stitch on the needle. So we've come to the end of our front. We've got one remaining stitch, and for this stitch we're going to knit into the front and the back of it. So knitting into the front of the loop and then into the back. Again, we've created an extra stitch that will form part of the seam. We've now just completed the first row of our chart that you can see here. I find it easier when I'm knitting a chart like this that doesn't have a repeating pattern, to look at my chart and figure out how many stitches I need to start before the colour work from the previous row. So as you can see, just zoom in a little, each square represents a stitch, and we're going to start our colour work 2 stitches before the previous row. So as you can see now, we've got 2 stitches in our main colour before our contrast colour. So this is where our colour work is going to start on our second row, which is a wrong side row. It's important to make sure that you link the 2 colours together so that there isn't a hole between the knitted stitches. To do this, we're going to pass the contrast colour under the main colour like that. Referring to our chart, we need to do 7 stitches in our contrast colour. When there are 5 or fewer stitches, we can just do a float like we did in the previous row. But if there are more than 5 stitches, we need to catch the float in to our knitting to allow the knitting to spread out at the same tension. You could imagine that if you do, for example, 10 stitches, and you bring the yarn over like that, it's more likely to pull in. So I'm going to knit 3 stitches, and then I'll show you how to catch the float. I'm just going to spread the stitches out a little, make sure our tension's okay, and then I'm going to bring the yarn up, knit a stitch, and bring the yarn down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we turn that to the right side, that's what our knitting looks like. So we're about to start our contrast colour again. So again, we're going to bring our main colour under the contrast colour, and now knit those stitches. Now this row is a little bit different because rather than just knitting a solid stripe of contrast colour, if you refer to the chart, we've got a stitch of the main colour in between. When we are getting to these rows where we're alternating main colour, contrast, main colour, contrast, main colour, we only need to form the link at the beginning of the colour work. For the remainder of the row, what we're going to do is keep the yarn in the same position. Now you'll notice that my contrast colour sits on top of the main colour. When you work across the row, keep the yarns in the same position. In order to help with that, what I like to do is put the lower yarn on the left hand side and the upper yarn on the right hand side. This means that when I go to pick up my main colour, I'll always be picking it up from the same position. So I'm now knitting my 3 stitches of the contrast colour. I put my contrast colour down, pick up my main colour, knit 1 stitch, put that down, pick up my main colour again, and knit 4 stitches to complete the colour work on that row. At the end of the colour work, I just pick up my main colour as previously, as the link will be formed automatically. And we'll work to the end of the row. Let's turn it around and look at that process from a wrong side row. So again, on the wrong side row, I need to create the link. To do that, I take my contrast colour and I bring it under my main colour, like so. You can see how that creates a link between the colour change. Now I'm going to purl 3 stitches, and you'll notice how my contrast colour is above my main colour. I want to keep that position along the row, so I'm going to bring my main colour to the left hand side, the contrast colour to the right hand side, and that means I'll always be picking up my main colour from below my contrast colour. Let's see how that works. I just keep my stitches slightly spread apart on the needle so that my tension isn't too tight. I am referring to the chart as we knit this. And again, at the end of the colour work, just pick up the main yarn as you've been doing along the row. And we'll knit to the end of the row. This is what the colour work looks like at the when we've completed it on the right side, and on the wrong side it will look like this.